Here at the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. I hope you guys are having a good morning. I am trying to, so I sent everybody the Johns Hopkins website, and suddenly I'm having trouble pulling it up. Nope. Here we go. The Johns Hopkins website give you your morning coronavirus update. 83,774 confirmed infections. Of those 83,774 confirmed infections, 36,654 have recovered. 2,867 have died. Of the 2,867 who have died, 2,682 of those have come from Hubei province in China, where Wuhan is. Overwhelmingly, the deaths have come from China. Outside of the 2,867 deaths, 34 have been in Iran, 17 have been in Italy, 13 have been in Korea, 4 have been in Japan, 2 have been in France, and I'm scrolling through, and 1 in the Philippines and 1 in Taiwan. Now, of the recovered people, of the 83,774 infected, 36,654 have recovered. 1 in Arizona, 1 in Seattle, 1 in Santa Clara, California, 1 in San Diego, California, and 2 in Chicago. The 2 in Chicago were the husband and wife. They have recovered. It would be great if the media, instead of attacking the president of the United States nonstop on this, would actually allow would actually put on some of the people who have recovered and give some exposure to the fact that you can recover from this. They're in so panic mode right now that they just can't bring themselves to do anything other than attack the president. And as a result of that, they are shaping their media coverage in ways that is problematic. So I wrote a piece this morning. I occasionally, I write to think. And it helps me with my thinking process to write. It's one reason I run a website. And I got to tell you, I am wondering if this is the moment where something bad really is going to happen in this country. Will anyone believe the media? The media, is just fundamentally committed to the fact that they themselves are above reproof, beyond reproach, that they themselves are the people who will save us, not the president, and that they themselves will tell us what matters and what does not matter. And they've been telling us these things for a while. Consider the stories from the media over the past couple of years. The coronavirus is now going to kill us and we're all going to die. But before that, net neutrality was going to kill us. We were all going to die because of net neutrality. Net neutrality is when the Federal Communications Commission, the FCC, decided they were not going to impose government regulations on internet service providers. The president's tax cuts were going to kill us all. The president's tax cuts were going to wipe us out. The president's tax cuts were going to destroy us. The president's tax cuts, everyone was going to die. Then there was a healthcare reform. Healthcare reform was going to kill us all. Healthcare reform, we were all going to die. Those Republicans, they're going to shove grandma off a cliff. Remember that? The Republicans, absolutely. Going to kill grandma by shoving her off a cliff. They actually ran ads with a Paul Ryan impersonator shoving grandma off a cliff. When the president moved the American embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, it was going to spark a war in the Middle East. And we were all going to die because of it. American soldiers' lives were going to be at stake. Terrorism would be on the uptake. We might be struck at home by people upset that the American embassy was moving to Jerusalem. Then there was the Iran agreement. By getting rid of the Iran agreement, Iran was going to get nuclear weapons. They were going to start a nuclear war in the Middle East. Then there was the Paris Accord. If we got out of the Paris Accord, things would go badly. The world would come to an end. And even now they're saying at first they said we had 12 years, and they said 10 years. The other night on the debate stage, they said 9 years. One Democratic politician, I think Beto O'Rourke, said 7 years left before we all die. Why? By the way, why are they concerned about the coronavirus if they think we're all going to die in 7 years anyway? And then there was killing Qasem Soleimani in January. Remember that? And that was going to start World War III. I mean, the pundits on television proclaimed that President Trump was starting World War III by going after Soleimani. And in each of these situations, they have proven themselves not just to be somewhat wrong, but utterly wrong. I don't know that I have found the right clip of this. I think I have found the right clip of this. I'm doing it on the fly. Let me see if this is the right clip from Steve Schmidt, who was on MSNBC.
I think that he is volatile and erratic. I think that's true. But I don't think his actions in this case are volatile and erratic. I think they're entirely predictable. And what's predictable, looking at the Ukraine issue, looking at every issue, is he over and over again acts in his own political interest. Looking at impeachment, what he did, for sure, is survey the situation and understood that with this action, with this strike, that he would create a giant smokescreen that clouds and distracts around the issue of impeachment. This is a political act that has endangered the country. Once again, this is Donald Trump acting in the international arena, detrimental to American security interests, now exceeding the outrageousness in Ukraine by an order of magnitude for self. And the result of this is a more dangerous world where Americans will be killed that otherwise would not have been killed.
That was Steve Schmidt. He's now in that Project Lincoln group or what have you that's trying to oust the president, going so far as to back Bernie Sanders, supposed Republicans who would be willing to back Bernie Sanders to oust the president of the United States. That was him after the president launched the strike to kill Qasem Soleimani. As the Iranians are responding, this is a completely destabilizing situation. This is bad. The president is going, we're all going to die. So now along comes the president of the United States, who forms a task force and puts the vice president in charge of it. And what's the media response to it? We're all going to die. We're all going to die. Is it any wonder the president doesn't listen to the experts? Is it any wonder the president of the United States is willing to second guess the people who are supposedly professional? Is it any wonder that the president of the United States isn't willing to believe these people? And now let's be sure here. There are reasons to be concerned about the coronavirus. There are absolutely reasons to be concerned about the coronavirus. There are absolutely reasons to be concerned about government bureaucracy, any government bureaucracy doing it. But it is notable that the loudest voices in the media attacking the president right now are partisans, not professionals. And the media is putting up partisans as professionals to give them the veneer of objectivity to attack the president of the United States right now. For example, they're trotting out a World Health Organization official, Ezekiel Emanuel. Does that name ring familiar? Ezekiel Emanuel, Death Panel Emanuel. Ezekiel Emanuel is the man who helped Obama structure Obamacare. He is Rahm Emanuel's brother. He is a partisan Democrat. He is the guy who helped Obamacare. He's the guy who really thought we needed to do cost-benefit analysis on senior citizens getting health care. And he's trotted out, because he's now at the World Health Organization, by the media to claim this president is going to screw it all up. You've got other Democrats out there who worked for Barack Obama on his pandemic task force that was created to deal with the Ebola outbreak that is not currently being outbroken. And the president wound it down. There was no need to keep it. There was no Ebola. There was no pandemic. He shut it down 2 years ago. And oh my goodness, we're all going to die because this president decided to reverse an Obama era bureaucratic decision. The media genuinely is floundering all over themselves on this issue and trying to scare people for partisan concerns, not for medical concerns, not for healthcare concerns. You were going to die with the tax cuts. You were going to die with net neutrality. You were going to die with health care reform. You're going to die because of Brett Kavanaugh. You're going to die because of Neil Gorsuch. I don't even know how I have ratings. Honest to goodness, I don't know how I have any ratings anywhere because everybody who's listening is dead. In fact, maybe this is heaven or maybe it's not. I mean, seriously. Certainly hell on earth these days. It seems like there are reasons to be concerned about the coronavirus, but the media is doing their best to make them partisan concerns. Let's see. Let me make sure I've got the guy's name right. There is a doctor, Mark Siegel. He's on Fox News. He's talking about the coronavirus. Listen.
They have 13 positive patients that have the coronavirus. They've been studying them. They know now some things we didn't know before. One, it's a lot more contagious than the flu. Two, it looks like it can be treated because these 13 patients are doing well. Two of them are out of now the biocontainment unit. One of them had a severe pneumonia. He was treated probably with an antiviral drug. He got better. You know, they've brought together spouses that were separated. This is an incredible unit. They're also reaching out around the country and spreading information to everybody. And they figured out that the virus is a cough, the symptoms are cough, shortness of breath, very different than the flu. So we clinicians can identify it.
Cough and shortness of breath, different from the flu. People are recovering. Again, this is good news that should be covered by the media and is not. The patient who was in Tempe, Arizona, recovered. The patient in Seattle, Washington, the very first person reported in this country, recovered. The patient in Santa Clara, California, recovered. The patient in San Diego, California, recovered. The patient in Chicago who passed it to her husband, she and her husband both recovered now. There are isolated reports in the media that, now pets are getting it and pets are spreading it to people. None of that is confirmed. There are isolated reports of someone getting the virus recurrent and getting sick and going back to the hospital. That is not confirmed. The odds are actually, talking to healthcare officials, that she was not fully recovered and was released from the hospital. And because she was not under medical care, it inflamed again. And yet the media wants to attack the president and play up these things and play up, oh my goodness, Vice President Mike Pence is in charge and Mike Pence is anti-science. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez literally got on social media yesterday and said that literally Mike Pence is anti-science. And she believes boys can become girls and girls can become boys. Here's Debbie Dingell, not a fan of the president. Democratic congresswoman, not a fan of the president.
So I want to be very clear that I think all of us need to not panic and remember they're very basic things. And I'm going to use this opportunity now. Wash your hands frequently. Go on and Google and learn how to wash them correctly. But I am worried about the supply chain. I have been from the beginning. I've been one of the people that's been following this coronavirus more closely than anybody. This is it's a short-term issue, no, it's a long-term issue. 90% of our pharmaceutical drugs, at least the contents of it, are made in China. We can't let that situation, it's brought light to a situation. We got to get it changed. We got to make sure we've got sterile, equipment, masks.
That doesn't rely on China's supply chain. I have 30 more seconds quickly. Given Vice President Pence's history as governor dealing with a recent public health crisis in terms of HIV in Indiana, is he the best equipped to lead this effort at the White House?
You know what? I don't think this is a time to take shots. I think this is a time for all of us to work together. Coronavirus is a potential threat. We've already seen what it's done to other countries. We've got to work together. If they're not doing what they need to do, then we need to make sure they are doing what they need to do. But taking cheap shots at people right now is not the thing to do. Working together is.
God bless her for saying that. And by the way, that was Poppy Harlow, the CNN anchor. How did Mike Pence exacerbate a situation in Indiana? 76 people. There was an outbreak of HIV from drug users using shared needles. The media launched a two-prong attack on Mike Pence. One is he shut down an abortion clinic. What did the abortion clinic have to do with anything? They were giving free HIV tests. We don't know that the HIV user, the drug users would go to the Planned Parenthood facility for the testing anyway. The second reason they're attacking him is because Mike Pence wanted to get the people into treatment as opposed to doing a needle exchange. He didn't think it was healthy or wise to let the drug addicts continue their drug addiction with clean needles. He wanted to get them into treatment. And he's being attacked for daring to have the audacity to think that maybe we should solve the root problem of addiction instead of just giving them clean needles so they don't pass HIV to each other. It wound up being 70 people in Indiana. That's it. It wasn't a mass outbreak. You listen to the media, they think it's a mass outbreak. It is because these people hate the president and the vice president. They are not willing to treat honestly with the president or the vice president. By the way, did you know that this week it is Transgender Week in American public schools? I wish I was making that up. In many American schools around the country, they are celebrating transgenderism this week. I didn't know that until this morning. My kids are not in a public school, thank goodness. But seriously, the priorities of the American press and the media and progressives these days, and they want to attack the vice president for having the audacity to think, hey, maybe the way to stop the HIV outbreak that's being caused by drug use is to help the people get over their drug addiction. No, Mr. Vice President, no. You were supposed to give them needles and let them OD. That's the media position, and that's pathetic.
Honest news and conservative views.
You can call in 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. The what is it? Is it the Second Circuit Court of Appeals? I can't remember. So I'm sorry. I suddenly, all of a sudden, brain fart on the circuit. The president ordered the Department of Homeland Security to stop allowing New Yorkers access to the Trusted Flyer program in New York City. So here's, if you don't know what the Trusted Flyer program is, TSA PreCheck and the like, it's a wonderful man. It as close to pre 9/11 flying as you can get, and if you have Clear, even more so. I've got Clear and PreCheck. And what it is a procedure whereby you go in, you get fingerprinted, they do a background check on you, you get a special card, and you get that card has a special number on it, and you give that number to airlines, and your plane ticket gets labeled specially. Your plane ticket essentially it gets a little logo on it, and it says TSA PreCheck, and you get to go through an expedited line. Now, the problem is so many Americans now have TSA PreCheck that sometimes it's faster to go through the regular line. In the regular line, you've got to empty your backpack, you got to take out your toiletries in the Ziploc bag, you got to take off your shoes, you got to take off your jacket, take everything out of your pocket. It's very cumbersome. When you go through a TSA PreCheck line, you show your ID and your ticket, and then you don't have to take off your shoes or your jacket. You don't have to take stuff out of your bag, and you pass it all through the security belt, and you go through. You don't have to go through the little scanner thing that scans your whole body unless you set off the standard metal detector that you walk through. If you have Clear, you don't even have to pull out your ticket and ID. They scan your fingerprint. It pops up your ticket and your name, and off you go. It's very quick. Well, the government of New York now is refusing to cooperate with the federal government on illegal aliens. And the Department of Driver Services, the Department of Corrections and all, they're refusing to hand over any data to the federal government that could help them identify illegal aliens. So as a result, this is information the federal government needs to be able to get into those state databases to figure out who is eligible for the Trusted Flyer program. The Trusted Flyer program also has a program called Global Entry, where if you have your Global Entry card, you go to Customs, you scan your card, and you whisk your way through Customs. You don't have to stop and get asked the bajillion questions and all that stuff. And so the government has shut New Yorkers out of this program. If you've already applied and been approved, you can stay in the program, but no new people are allowed into the program in New York. So New York sued. It was an expedited hearing, and the judges, the federal judges, have said, no, the federal government has the power to do this. And now they want to appeal to the Supreme Court, and the odds are New York is going to pay the price. And, I like this. I do. I'm okay with sanctuary city. I'm not okay with them. Don't mistake me. I oppose sanctuary cities. But if a state wants to do it, I'm all about federalism. Let the state do it and then just cut off their government funding. You want a sanctuary city, that's fine, but you get no money from the federal government. And if states pick their principal, do they want the money or do they want the principal? If they go with the principal, okay, no federal money for you. Shut them out of the Trusted Flyer program. And federal courts are saying, you know what? The president's allowed to do this to you. He can lock you out of the program, and there's nothing you can do. In New York, they are seriously upset about it.
Oh, hi. Do you know what this is the sound of?
A lot of people are worried about the coronavirus and what to do. By the way, if you want access to the Johns Hopkins University visual dashboard of the coronavirus global spread, text the word data to 33777, and I'll send you back almost immediately the link. I got an automated. It's not me actually sitting here texting, and I was actually stunned yesterday when someone actually thought it was me texting people back live on the radio. Oh, God bless her. Yep, really thought I was doing my monologue and texting people in real time. I'm not gonna. I don't. She got a laugh out of it as well when I explained it. It's an automated system. I've got it set up. Text the word data to 33777. You'll be able to see this dashboard from Johns Hopkins, and it shows you the total number of confirmed cases, the total deaths, the total recovered, the chart on rates, and also the heat map of where the major spread is. And obviously, the major spread is in Asia, China, South Korea, and Tokyo, Japan, that area. There's some in Southeast Asia. Then there's a hot spot in Italy and Iran. Interestingly enough, a buddy of mine pointed out this morning that in a survey of Italy, Italians, particularly northern Italians in that area, are the least likely Italians to wash their hands. And that is one thing that health experts are telling us is regularly washing your hands would be a good thing. Now, east of the Mississippi in the United States, we still have one confirmed existing case in Madison, Wisconsin. There are 2 recovered cases in Chicago, and there is 1 existing case in Boston. West of the Mississippi is where the problems are. But again, I want to give you the 83,774 confirmed cases around the world, 60 in the United States, no deaths in the United States. There are 36,654 of those 83,774 who have recovered. And in the United States, 1 in Tempe, Arizona, 1 in Seattle, Washington. The one in Seattle, Washington is notable because that's the first person in the United States who was diagnosed. 1 in Santa Clara, California, 1 in San Diego, California, and then the 2 in Chicago who were the husband and wife, where the wife was in Wuhan, got it, came home, infected her husband. They've both been in medical care, and they have both now recovered. The spread is very much like the flu. You come into contact with people. You come into contact with their bodily fluids through coughing, through sneezing, or the spread. This virus can live on the surface of things for more than 24 hours. So wash your hands. Wash your hands. There are a lot of people who do expect it to spread into the United States, and the media is seizing upon Vice President Pence. And the Vice President has spoken on this. Here, let me give you his thoughts.
The risk of the spread of the coronavirus in the United States of America remains low. That's according to all of our experts, and it's a direct result of the unprecedented action that President Trump took last month when he closed our border to Chinese individuals coming into the country and also established a quarantining effort. Our White House coronavirus task force has literally been meeting every day for the last 6 weeks, and the American people can be confident that we're going to bring, at the president's direction, the full resources of the federal government to bear to protect the people of this country. That being said, during this time of year, it's always a good idea to engage in best practices, and people can go to cdc.gov to get the latest information on not only this virus, but how they can best see to the health of their family and their community.
The media actually is angry with him for saying that. They were blasting him, among other places, on CNN for saying that the risk is low in this country, that it's building false confidence in people. Y'all, we've entered peak derangement syndrome among members of the press. Forget the Democrats. Members of the press are melting down over this. I could spend an entire week talking about how the media has just been broken by the president. Every angle they take on every story has to have a story about the president. You will note 2 weeks ago, I'm not making this up, 2 weeks ago, the media reported that the coronavirus was on the decline, COVID-19 was winding down, and that everything was okay. And then suddenly, 2 weeks later, we're in full panic. Remember, 2 weeks ago, the market rebounded because the media told us everything was okay, everything was going to be fine. And then suddenly the media flipped out because of the president. It's all about the president. Now, let me give you facts and recommendations from talking to doctors. And on my evening show on WSB prior to that, my friend Clark Howard had some epidemiologists and infectious disease experts on talking to them. Here are some things you can do. If you're terribly freaked out about the coronavirus, here are a few things that you can do. One, make sure you are washing your hands regularly and not touching your face. I touch my face all the time. You know, telling me not to touch my face, like me talking about it right now, my right under my nose is already itching and I want to scratch because I'm telling myself, don't touch my face. So naturally, I want to touch my face. And there are people who say you can teach yourself not to touch your face. But all of you right now, like meth addicts, are suddenly picking your skin on your face because I'm telling you not to do it. I know you people, but don't do it. Wash your hands regularly. Wash your face a couple of times a day. Good hygiene habits anyway. And then what about food stockpiling? Let's talk about food stockpiling. You can buy meats and frozen goods and keep them in your freezer for some amount of time, and all will be well. And you may want to. I go down, there's a great butcher shop down in South Georgia, in Hawkinsville, Georgia. I've talked about this before. There's a place called M&T Meats. And you go down there and you can find any meat you want, any seafood you want, and they'll have it. And you can get it, and you can get them to vacuum seal it, and you can bring it home and throw it in your freezer, and it'll keep several months. And you can, to some degree, a lot of frozen meats, they're not gonna taste good. They're gonna taste freezer burned. But you can for a while. They'll survive, but you'll get tired of it. The taste, the freezer burn taste. You want to eat frozen meats 3 to 4 months, preferably. But still, you can go get some, stockpile in the freezer if you want. In China and in other places with the outbreak, the power hasn't gone off. People are still manning the power plants. So it's not something that you really have to worry about. You can go put frozen meats. You can go to your local store and buy the big bags of frozen chicken and frozen hamburgers and stuff. Put those in your freezer as you need. But more particularly, get some canned foods. Get some pasta, get some dried beans, get some canned beans. The dried beans and the pasta, fairly cheap stuff. Your eggs will last for a while, but not a ton of time. Your dairy's not going to last. Get yourself bottles of water if that makes you feel better. But one thing that you need to note is do not overbuy. And this is actually the issue here is the overbuying and the overpurchase of food is a lot of people will go hoarding and they will buy up supplies of stuff that ultimately go to waste. And not only is it stuff that will ultimately go to waste, they're depriving other people in the community of food. So be careful. I have not been into my local Publix, but I'm assuming they've got fully stocked shelves. The coronavirus panic. There's no reason, particularly, if we're in Georgia right now, just to put a finer rub on it. Those of you who are listening online, I'm sorry, but let me make this a very precise Georgia point right now. If you're in Georgia right now, there are no cases of the coronavirus. There are rumors of the coronavirus, most spread by internet trolls, but there is no coronavirus here. There's no reason to storm the grocery store. There's no reason to go buy up the shelves at your local Sam's Club or Costco or BJ's because there is no concern here. Again, there have been 4 cases east of the Mississippi River in the United States, and 2 of those are fully recovered. So I wouldn't freak out. It is worth, and I had this conversation with my wife last night, it is worth it in your next several grocery runs. And pay attention to this, and I use I use the language intentionally. In your next several grocery runs. Don't do it like, oh my gosh, you saw a snowflake, I got to go to the grocery store. Because I'm in Macon. For those of you who don't know, I'm in Macon. And in Macon, just the threat of a single snowflake will cause every can of beer and gallon of milk to disappear from the local Kroger and Publix. So on your next several grocery runs, buy an extra box or two of pasta. Buy a bag or two of dried beans. You soak them 24 hours or put them in your Instapot. They're good to go. And buy some canned goods. If you're really desperate, get yourself some Velveeta. It'll last. Ugh. If you want to buy those packs of Bubba burgers, they're the frozen hamburgers you can get at the grocery store. They're not the best. Typically, go get your own meat. Like even the prepackaged ground beef at the grocery store is way better than the prepackaged hamburgers. And the reason that they're better than the prepackaged hamburgers is that the prepackaged hamburgers are mass produced and they tend to kind of be tougher. They have a little bit of a taste to them. But you can get yourself some of the frozen meat, too. Get yourself some. If you're my household, we got to go buy frozen chicken nuggets because that's about the only thing my kid eats. But don't panic. Don't go hoard a bunch of stuff because, one, you're wasting your money, and two, you're depriving other people of stuff as well. Go be deliberative about it. In the next several weeks, if you're like me, you go to the grocery store once or twice a week. Each time you go, buy a little extra of the dried goods and the canned goods mostly, and some of the frozen stuff that'll last for a while. Check the expiration date on some of the frozen stuff. Some of it has sell-by dates, and you don't want to get close. But there's no reason to overwhelmingly be deluged in the grocery store and clearing out the shelves, as some people tend to do, and those people are going to waste their money. You don't need to be a hoarder. You don't need to be a prepper. None of that stuff. Buy yourself some hand sanitizer. And if you keep it in your car, if you've got to be out of your house, do it. One thing you don't need to buy, and this is the thing everybody is buying, but you don't need to buy it, is a mask. You don't need a mask. Now, why don't you need a mask? There are a couple of reasons you don't need a mask. Number one, you don't need a mask because the mask is for the sick people. If you're sick, get the mask. If you're not sick, you've actually got a higher risk, according to a lot of experts, you've got a higher risk of contracting the flu or the coronavirus or something else by wearing the mask. Now, how exactly does that work? Well, because the mask gives you a false sense of security. The mask is to keep someone from expelling their germs from their mouth into the air. What happens with the people who are sick and don't wear the mask is they expel their germs into the air, and you breathe, and your breathing through the mask pulls the germs to the mask and keeps them on the mask. So when you grab it with your hand and you take it off your face at the end of the day, confident that you have saved yourself from the disease, what have you done? You've brought the germs into your house living on the mask, and now you've taken it off your face, and now the germs are on your hand, and where you touch your hand in your house is going to be covered with the germs. Unless you take the mask off and immediately wash your hands. If you're in that habit, that's fine. But there are intervening messages. Now, there are people saying, and a buddy of mine is texting me, the mask can prevent you from touching your mouth and stuff. Yeah, the mask can. Just get in the habit of not touching your face. Because seriously, the greater risk of wearing the mask is you get the germs on the exterior of the mask. And when you take the mask off and are finally like, oh, thank goodness, I can finally rub my nose, you've rubbed the coronavirus straight up into your nasal passageway. Don't get the mask if you're healthy. That is a common consensus among experts. Don't wear the mask if you're healthy. Wear the mask if you're worried you might get or have symptoms. Not, oh my gosh, I'm worried I'm going to get the coronavirus. Let me wear the mask. No, you've come into contact with people who get it. Start wearing the mask yourself. Again, the mask is to protect other people, not to protect you. Be polite and wear the mask. A buddy of mine's been traveling around the world in the last few weeks since this has broken out. He's finally come home, but he was in Asia as the coronavirus was breaking out, and said it was amazing the number of people who went out, got in line and started wearing the masks. He said on a flight he had, where was he? He was in Thailand, I think. He said every single person on the plane was wearing the mask. None of them were sick. Everybody was wearing the mask. And he thought it was kind of funny. Said there was only one guy on the plane who wasn't wearing the mask. It was very clearly a European tourist. All the Asians were wearing masks. And he thought, I'm going to wear the mask so I make people comfortable. But the reality is we're not protecting anybody. We're certainly not protecting ourselves, and he's right. There's no reason to be wearing the mask unless you're sick. And I realize the CDC is now telling people shave your beard and mustache and you can wear the mask. But the reality is what it is for is to keep you from spreading the germs to other people. In the meantime, each time you go to the grocery store, buy a couple extra cans of canned food. Buy a couple extra boxes of pasta. Buy an extra couple of cans of pasta sauce. Get you some of the frozen meat, and you'll be okay. There's no reason to overdo it. There's no reason to panic. Could it spread in the United States? Yes, it could. Now, here, interestingly, is some data that isn't getting talked about a lot. Do you know who is least likely to get it? Kids. There have been a number of studies that have been done, and most of the kids who test positive for it have no symptoms, and none of them have died. They've all made full recoveries. It is the older you are, the worse it is. And that's led to some conspiracy theories that maybe this really was lab manufactured, and the Chinese are trying to use it to wipe out older populations of the Uyghurs or the Christians and snatch their kids into government control away from people who might indoctrinate them into a religious order. I kid you not. This is now circulating on the internet. It was kind of funny. I sent an email to some friends last night and said, I'm hearing this, and I imagine that there are going to be conspiracy theories from people that, this really was lab manufactured. And it was designed to wipe out the elderly Christians and Uyghur Muslim populations in China. And sure enough, a buddy of mine replied back and says, yeah, that's already happening. Look here. And there's a host of conspiracy theories online about it. What I can tell you is I think it's very notable that as this has gone on, a lot of people who were telling Tom Cotton he was crazy for suggesting this could have come out of that bioweapons lab in Wuhan are now suddenly not saying he's crazy. A lot of people who were dismissive of the idea now are saying, yeah, this actually could have been a lab accident. The more we learn about this disease, the more it does look lab grown. No one knows for certain. It is all speculation. The Chinese certainly are not saying, but it's definitely in the cards of possibility, even if not probability.
Well connected and well respected.
Okay, yeah. So yes, please do text the word recipe to 33777. I'll try to get a recipe out today. I don't have one planned, but I will try to get a recipe out for you if you text recipe to 33777. If you've already texted, don't worry about it. You'll get it. But if you haven't ever signed up for the recipe list, that's how you do it. And I've gotten the emails from people. Hey, I don't have a cell phone that can text. I'm like, what? Welcome to the 21st century, Grandpa. I shouldn't say it that way. That's rude. But or someone who's out of the country, and you'll have to email me if you can't text that. But okay. This story. One of my pet peeves in life is the politically correct culture that is taking over schools. Do you know my kid is in a Christian school and told me yesterday that they're not allowed to refer to someone as gay. And she explained that, well, of course not when you got a kid in school and you're using gay as pejorative. But she said one of the kids actually talked about a gay man and got in trouble for saying gay. I was like, what are you supposed to say? Homosexual to describe the person? She had no idea. But the zero tolerance policy in schools of the good kids have to be punished like the bad kids. The good kid brings in an Advil or a Bear aspirin, and suddenly they're going to be treated like a drug dealer, like one of the actual drug dealers. It drives me crazy. And one of the things that also drives me crazy in this PC culture is the we can't have any hurt feelings. And so in Lake Town, Utah, a school is being sued by a mother because this is so stupid and it drives me insane. The school's being sued by a mother because the school has a policy that if you have a school dance, you can't say no to someone who wants to be danced with. And one of the girls is getting bullied by a boy, and the school is telling the girl that if the boy wants to dance with her at the school dance, she's got to dance with him because that's the school policy. 15. And the mother's like, oh, no, hell, you don't. And the school's trying to double down on this. These school administrators are so stupid. I am a professional, so I know I'm not supposed to admit to you that, dear Lord, I can't wake up today. I guess I'm woken up enough for you people to keep you energized. Welcome. It's Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show. The phone number, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. Blue skies outside, at least here in Macon. We got blue skies today, which is great. Cold and blue sky, and good gracious almighty, the rain is coming back at some point, and it's going to, I don't like this cycle of it gets hot and then it rains. Like, for example, right now where I am, it is 45 degrees. It's 39 degrees up in Adairsville. What is it in Rome? It's 43 degrees in Rome right now. And it's blue sky here. And by Wednesday, it's going to be in the 70s and raining again. And then guess what happens? It's going to go back down into the 40s. My only saving grace is at the end of next month, I am going to Hilton Head for spring break with my kids at the end of next month. And they sent us the keys today, and it's a glorious thing. And, you know, I'm getting reports. What is this? In their sleety drizzle. Yeah, good gracious. It's snowing in Blue Ridge right now. And there's freezing precipitation up in Jasper. I just pulled up the radar because I see that alert. Yeah, Rome, you're going to get some rain. Jasper and Blue Ridge and even Dalton's had a little bit this morning up in North Georgia. My goodness, the weather cannot make up its mind. And I'm not here to talk about the weather, but nonetheless, it was nice to actually have a little bit of winter. They're saying that Georgia is going to have a terrible allergy season this year because we had such a mild winter, and I can believe it. And also the peaches are going to be terrible. Now, can we have a moment of confession? Don't hate me, people. Don't hate me when I confess this, but I'll confess my sins to you. I hate peaches. I despise the smell of peaches. I hate driving through South Georgia and smelling the peaches when they're in season and ready for harvest. And my wife loves peaches. And do you know how much I love my wife? I love my wife so much. I have a professional ice cream maker. I love to cook. That's why I send out a recipe all the time. I love to cook. And every couple of years, my wife and kids give me one giant gift for Father's Day, because Father's Day and my birthday are close together. And a couple of years ago, they got me a professional ice cream maker. I can turn out 2 quarts of ice cream in 15 minutes in the sucker, and it's fantastic. I have become a specialist in salted caramel ice cream. I make homemade caramel and turn it into ice cream. And in fact, my specialty, the thing that I love the most, is I use double stuffed Oreos and make cookies and cream ice cream, and it is fantastic. But because I love my wife as much as I love my wife, I will make her buttermilk homemade peach ice cream. That's right. It is buttermilk homemade peach ice cream. And I'll make it for my wife because I love her. And then I make her clean out the ice cream machine because I hate peaches. So I hate fruit. Let's just be honest. I hate fruit. I've never liked fruit. I was actually in law school before I would take communion in church because I didn't want to have to drink anything from grapes. I hate grapes so much. When I was a kid, I was sick, and my mom gave me a variety of fruity flavored cough medicines, and I threw them all up, and I've never eaten fruit since. I'll eat an apple, and that's it, because there was no apple flavored medicine. But man, the strawberry, strawberries make me want to gag. Y'all didn't come here for this. I'm sorry. Tirade. I'm sorry. Randomness. Just the peach crop is supposed to suck this year because we haven't had enough cold temperatures. We'll get on to all the other news of the day as people are pinging me and saying, you're losing your audience. You're losing your audience. Let's talk about South Carolina. Joe Biden is expected to win. Okay. I'm sorry. I made the mistake of looking at my computer screen, and there is a young rapper who has a new album out, and his name is Herbo or Little Herb. Where the hell do these people come up with rapper names? I have no idea. Okay. In any event, Now, South Carolina, Joe Biden is in the lead, and the question is going to be how much in the lead is Joe Biden? How well does Joe Biden actually do in the South Carolina race? And the question there, and the reason it must be asked, is because if Joe Biden pulls off a big win in South Carolina, Joe Biden has the potential to reset this race. History. Let's go to some history. In 1992, William Jefferson Blythe Clinton, governor of the state of Arkansas. I gotta, whoa. Let me give you a bigger, more expansive history lesson here. In 1992, George H.W. Bush was president of the United States and had won the Gulf War. I kid you not that the Gallup poll had George H.W. Bush's popularity at 89%. Some polls had his popularity at 91%. Can you imagine that? In our current political age, can you imagine the President of the United States having a 91% approval rating? A 91% approval rating. George H.W. Bush had also broken his promise. In 1988, being the heir of Ronald Reagan, George H.W. Bush got on stage at the Republican convention and said, "Read my lips, no new taxes," and then broke his promise with the Democrats. He decided he needed a deal to deal with the federal debt and deficit, among other things, and decided he would raise taxes. And Republicans campaigned against him. And in 1990, George H.W. Bush, with popularity rising, refused to campaign for any Republican who had opposed his tax increase, and also demanded that if the National Republican Congressional Committee wanted any help from him at all, they would have to fire their young executive director at the time, a guy named Ed Rollins, who you might have heard of. And George W. Bush campaigned, and a lot of people got very angry with him. But then the Gulf War, the beginning of 91, we fought the Gulf War. It was over in a matter of weeks, and George W. Bush's popularity skyrocketed. I mean, 89% in Gallup, 91%, I think it was an NBC News poll, 91% popularity. The Democrats decided there was only one man in America who could beat George H.W. Bush. And that was a guy named Mario Cuomo. Mario Cuomo was the Democratic governor of New York. His son, Andrew Cuomo, is now the governor of New York. His other son, Chris Cuomo, is the partisan CNN anchor. And in 1992, Mario Cuomo, savior of the Democratic Party, decided he wasn't going to run. And it was a real question as to who would actually run. A lot of people insisted that Cuomo run, and his heart really wasn't in running. He didn't like it. He didn't want it. He was secure where he was. And so many people urged him to run. So many people insisted that he run. I mean, he was going to be the savior of the Democratic primary. And yet he refused to do it. And so other people decided to run. You had people, Douglas Wilder, the governor, the first African-American governor of Virginia. He actually withdrew before Iowa. Tom Harkin, the senator from Iowa, ran. Bob Kerrey, the senator from Nebraska, ran. Paul Tsongas from Massachusetts ran. And Jerry Brown, the governor of California, ran. And Tom Harkin, who was the senator from Iowa, he wound up winning Iowa, obviously. And then Paul Tsongas, the senator from Massachusetts, he wound up winning the New Hampshire primary. And then they rebounded, and they got to Nevada, and Jerry Brown won the Nevada primary. So in your first three races there, you had Tom Harkin won Iowa, Jerry Brown won Nevada and Paul Tsongas won Massachusetts. And people wrote off Bill Clinton, decided that Bill Clinton couldn't win. And so Clinton did exactly what Joe Biden is now doing. Clinton packed up on the campaign trail before the race had even been declared in New Hampshire, and he went down to South Carolina, and he campaigned nonstop. No one had gotten the Democratic nomination without winning Iowa or New Hampshire. And in the midst of all that, there was the Jennifer Flowers outbreak. Jennifer Flowers claimed she had had a sexual relationship with Bill Clinton and had been intimidated to keep it quiet. He had this famous sit-down interview with 60 Minutes with Steve Kroft, who, interestingly enough, I believe Steve Kroft had problems later in his life. And he and Hillary Clinton sat there, and the lights famously fell. No, I guess it wasn't Steve Kroft. I apologize. It wasn't Kroft. It was someone. It was one of the other 60 Minutes people had issues. But in any event, so Steve Kroft did this very famous interview with Bill Clinton, and the lights collapsed. Bill had to jump up with Hillary Clinton. So the lights collapsed. It's a very famous video. You can go find it on YouTube. But he was able to contain the damage headed into South Carolina. And Clinton wound up winning South Carolina. And Clinton declared himself after Tsongas won, and Clinton got second place in New Hampshire. Clinton, people forget about this. They claim it after South Carolina, but it was after New Hampshire. Clinton lost New Hampshire. Paul Tsongas, who was the senator from Massachusetts, came in first in New Hampshire, and Clinton declared himself the comeback kid by coming in second place. And then Clinton went down south and he swept the southern states on Super Tuesday, in particular South Carolina. Clinton won South Carolina, overwhelming support of the black vote. The other candidates had not had any encounter with picking up black voters, and Clinton won. And Clinton went on to dominate the race. And in fact, you got to the Democratic primary. You got to the Democratic convention. Where was the Democratic convention that year? Where was it? New York City. That's right, New York City. And Clinton dominated. He got over 52% of the delegates. He wound up choosing Al Gore as his running mate. Gore from Tennessee. Gore had tried to run. He got one delegate at the convention and became the running mate. And they went on and made history. We went into an economic recession. And the Clinton campaign, they took a very distinctive tack with James Carville. You'll probably remember this, even if you weren't alive at the time. It's the economy, stupid. And Clinton and the Democrats ran on it's the economy, stupid. And they had a willing media help them portray George H.W. Bush as out of touch with the common people. Yes, a war hero. Yes, a veteran. Yes, a wonderful human being. But he was bad on the economy, had been a creature of Washington for so long, he was out of touch with the American people, and it was time for him, a good man, to be gone. And the public swept George H.W. Bush out of office. A man who had a 89 to 91% approval rating a year before, beaten. It's very Churchillian almost. Churchill, you'll recall, immediately after World War II, the public threw him out of office. They heralded the man as the savior of Britain, then were time to move on and threw him out of office. Very much the same thing with George H.W. Bush, heralded as a hero and thrown out of office because of the economy by Bill Clinton. And then he and Clinton very famously became very good friends thereafter. And George W. Bush and Bill Clinton are very good friends and still close to this day. And that's what Joe Biden's trying to do in South Carolina. Biden is trying to be the comeback kid in South Carolina. In fact, he's used the phrase comeback kid. The question for Joe Biden is, can he have a huge win in South Carolina as opposed to a small win in South Carolina? What does Bernie Sanders do? Can Joe Biden hang on and have a big enough win and get so many delegates that it makes him competitive through the process? And if so, ironically, then all the focus turns on Mike Bloomberg, who today is saying he's going to hang on until the convention because he wants to stop Bernie Sanders, and he's convinced himself he's got to hang on there and disrupt all of it in order to stop Bernie Sanders. Well, meanwhile, the polling suggests if he got out, most of his voters would go back to Biden, and Biden could crush Bernie Sanders. All of these candidates in the race continues to help Bernie Sanders, but the big question is, Just how big a win is Biden going to get? Let's talk about the polls and what happens in the next couple of days. Because remember, tomorrow is South Carolina. It's Friday, the 28th of February. Tomorrow is South Carolina. And then 3 days later is Super Tuesday. So what does it mean for us here in Georgia? What does it mean for the nation? What does it mean for Bernie Sanders? Let's dive into this when we come back.
News and in-depth analysis.
It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. Remember, text the word recipe to 3 in any event. So now what is going to happen in South Carolina? Joe Biden is going to win. That is a foregone conclusion. Let me just put it to you this way. Dead. Not physically dead, but he is dead. I mean, he is toast in South Carolina. He's got a 12-point lead in the Biden at 41 and Bernie Sanders at 25. Remember, in order to get delegates. Now, the way the delegate district, and you must get to 15% in these. Then you must get to 15% in the state overall to get them. So again, the delegate is, I forget how many are awarded per congressional district, but you got to get wide as well. If you get to 15% statewide, then you get statewide delegates. And you do that, you're good. And Biden is polling, according to Emerson, at 41%. Had a bias towards Bernie Sanders. And get to 50%. If you get over 50 non-online poll, the 20th, the live operator, those tend to be quality polls. It's probably not good in North Carolina's early voting. A lot of people suddenly decide Bernie Sanders is going to go all the way to Biden. Then suddenly Sanders is still the front runner. But if Joe Biden is the comeback kid. Joe Biden is duplicating the pena with black voters. He's the only one. Buttigieg and Klobuchar have no path forward. And there are a number of people who are saying that maybe Buttigieg is thinking of dropping out. Buttigieg himself says he's got to reprioritize his race to stop Bernie Sanders. Honestly, I think if Bush running for office with the largest sense of, we're going to screw this thing up if we don't stop Sanders. It is Erick Erickson here. You know, I'm browsing the web during commercial, and it's like every ad knows I need to go hit golf balls this weekend. I got to join a golf course. In any event, the phone number here, 877-97-ERIC, 877-973-7425. YouTube is dropping a lot of sports programming. What does that have to do with anything? Well, I find this interesting. So YouTube now has streaming services. There's actually a website now called the Streamable. And so you've got the AT&T TV Now service. I've never heard of Fubo TV. You've got Hulu Live, Sling TV, and YouTube TV. And YouTube TV is canceling the Fox Regional Sports Networks and the Yes Network effective February 29th. Right before the start of the baseball season. In a statement to the Streamable, this website that documents this stuff, it says, our goal with YouTube TV is to offer you the content you love, deliver the way you want. Despite our best efforts, we were unable to reach an agreement with Sinclair, the content provider that offers the Fox Regional Sports Network and Yes Network. Beginning February 29th, users will no longer be able to watch live, on-demand, or recorded content from these networks. We don't take the decision lightly, and we'll continue to do our best to make YouTube TV a best-in-class experience. You know, here's the thing. It's striking to me that they have bailed on sports, because the entire rationale these days for most live TV is sports. I can't, honest to goodness. So I've got a DirecTV package. And the reason I have the DirecTV package really is for this program. If there is a live service, if there's a live news event, and I want to feed it to you guys, I need to be able to access CNN, Fox, the various outlets, and so I got to get the DirecTV package to be able to do it. And in so doing, the only time I actually watch live TV is if it's a sports program, particularly football. With baseball, I actually have the Major League Baseball package and watch it on my Apple TV. I don't actually watch baseball on DirecTV. I watch it with the Major League Baseball app on my Apple TV, on my iPhone, on my iPad, on my TV with the Apple TV box. But for football, it is very typically I will watch it on TV. And my kid now is really into soccer and wants to watch soccer all the time. I'm not a huge soccer fan. The games are pretty awesome to go to, but watching it on TV, it's like watching grass grow. Let's just be honest. Nonetheless, I would actually rather watch golf on TV. But I need to go hit golf balls. Nonetheless, so they're canceling it, and I just think that's going to be a collapse of the YouTube TV service. I know a lot of younger people who bought YouTube TV to stop having to pay massive prices with the cable company, but they're huge sports addicts, and now they're dropping it, and they're going to have all sorts of problems trying to get it. So in any event, one footnote there. Now, I want to turn back to the Democratic presidential race. There's this actual funny moment. Mike Bloomberg on the campaign trail, and I'm sorry, I'll get to Mike Bloomberg in a minute. Joe Biden on the campaign trail. This line, listen to this.
I'll conclude by saying no man has a right to lay a hand on a woman for any other reason than self-defense. And I'm going to make the controversial statements I always made. If someone in this room got up, took off all her clothes and walked out the door, no man has a right to touch her. Zero. She can be arrested for indecent exposure.
What Joe Biden is saying is that if a man touches that a woman at his rally, she's allowed to strip. She's allowed to get, as we would say in the South, she's allowed to get naked. She's allowed to get naked at a Joe Biden rally, and no man's allowed to touch her. She can get arrested for indecent exposure, but no man's allowed to touch her. Now, this is kind of funny coming from Joe Biden, a man who has a history of groping women. Nonetheless, a little more of Biden on the campaign trail in South Carolina.
And here's the last point. If you take a look at it, China's now going to, and I'm not happy about this, China doesn't have enough water, W-A-T-E-R. They're talking about spending hundreds of billions of dollars to try to turn around the rivers so their population have potable water to drink. 40% of their land is polluted with cadmium. They can't grow things. They're in a situation where they have 2 million Uyghurs, Muslims, in prison camps in the mountains. You see what's happening in Hong Kong, and now what they're trying to do with regard to Thailand. Folks,
He's saying this in light of Mike Bloomberg, and he's trying to compare him to Democrats on that issue, as he should, by the way. Threat, I think Democrats would actually be more willing to point out how terrible he is. Here's Rob.
His PAC went 0 for 22. That tells you in 2018, when Democrats are having a model that he's looking at, it has 2019, big turnout for Democrats. We'll see what Super Tuesday produces.
But a lot of other people aren't turning, and I want to be real clear with this. This is speculation. Emanuel, in particular, has been one of the people talking about it in Iowa, in New Hampshire, and again, it is speculation. The older voters are voting for Trump. You're not seeing this massive wave of people come into the Democratic primaries. You know, it's one thing. The polling is not wrong. The poll of what the poll said she would. It's just. But she won the popular vote. The polls weren't wrong. And the polls are starting to see. Polls are starting to bear out what the poll if everyone hated the president as much as everyone on the Democratic side claimed. And now the fear actually able to do a good job in South Carolina and get not just a double do. It makes Mike Bloomberg have to get out of the race. It may stop Bernie. Bernie's in the lead. We got to stop Bernie. If Joe Biden, then suddenly all these other clowns got to get out of the race and back. To win it, she'll go all the way to the convention. She's got a tested convention. That's not good. Meanwhile, Nancy Pelosi's on damage control, but there's something to be.
But it's not about causing any division with respect for his or her positions and hopefully with their respect. If you make a decision to win, you have to make every subsequent decision to win. No.
And we'll have conversations. This is not a Nancy Pelosi. Nancy Pelosi would be signaling loudly. This is Anton Gunn. He was a Barack Obama advisor. And even he's now starting to say out loud what you're not supposed to.
The Democratic Party has a party. The party decides its nominee. The public doesn't really decide the nominee. The public gets to vote for President of the United States, but people who are active in the party, who participate in the party, Bernie Sanders or a pledged delegate for Joe Biden, doesn't mean when you get to the convention floor, be the standard bearer for the party to try to win in November. And so Bernie got to understand that process, and it's a real selective and detailed process. In 2008, the Obama campaign from the very beginning focused on the delegate process because we knew it all was going to come down to the delegates, who's committed to you, who wants to be on your team at the end, and do you really feel like they can be elected?
You know what happens with the delegates? In the first round of the Democratic convention, they're bound. So the delegates who are assigned to Sanders are assigned to Sanders, and they vote for Sanders. Any candidates in the race, and the way this is breaking out across the states, he's not going to get to 50%. Biden may be able to beat him and still not get 50%, and it's all bets are off. What's actually going to happen? Sanders voters are in the minority. Unless Sanders can find some renewed momentum. So the problem is Sanders is not going to win South Carolina. The odds are now he could. I mean, we don't know. I keep saying Joe Biden's going to win. All the polls show Joe Biden's going to win. All the internal polling from all the candidates show Joe Biden's going to win. You know how I know that Joe Biden's going to win? Bernie Sanders is not campaigning in South Carolina. He's gone on to California and to Texas. And that's a pretty big red flag that even the Sanders internal polling has Joe Biden winning South Carolina. If Joe Biden wins South Carolina, he may be able to pull something off in Texas. If he pulls something off in Texas, that blunts Bernie Sanders in California. Do you know why? Do you know what the socialists in California did? The idiots in California, they arranged their primary so that your vote in California only counts if your envelope is postmarked on Election Day. Now, what does that actually mean? In most states, your ballot has to be at the Board of Elections by. In California, all that has to happen is your ballot has to be postmarked by Election Day. So we could come 2 weeks later, and by law, California has to count the vote. And so Sanders, if he doesn't dominate in California, it could be 2 weeks before we get a certification that he's actually won California. And meanwhile, you've got Biden winning elsewhere. That's going to be good for Biden. That's what the Democrats are now hoping for. They're hoping California screws it up so that they can screw up the Bernie Sanders narrative, which is amazing. Amazing. But it's all going to come down to South Carolina tomorrow. Here's what you need to know. Bottom line, I'd like to move on from this. I do want to spend a little bit on Mike Bloomberg, but on South Carolina in particular. If Joe Biden wins and he's above a 15-point win, Joe Biden is the comeback kid, and he very well may go the distance. If Joe Biden's win is in single digits with Bernie Sanders, the odds are still Bernie Sanders is the nominee, and the Democrats are panicked about that.
Well connected.
$144 of last year's gains. Wow. So Burns has noted if you're a business, even pay attention to this. If you got a business employees, the team at and out of balance, you give you your 401k and say, here, go to this company. They're going to manage your 401k, and they're not going to take over your 401k unless you want them to. 1k, things like that. I really, really recommend for it. They manage mine. I've moved mine to Chris and his team to talk to your employer 10 years. No. They're not sponsoring. Explain the risk value. Give your employees some peace of day. They're not commissions based. But at a time like this, when we have other stuff to talk about as well, including some Georgia Hello and welcome. It is Erick Erickson here, the Erick Erickson Show across the state of Georgia. I'd give you the number, but the call screener has now gone on a week. Get him on to talk about the markets. You know, his basic message is don't panic, invest out to Dynamic Money. This hour is not sponsored by him. This week has gotten to be a great friend, and it's nice to have a friend who and his company, they'll sit down and talk to you. They can do it by Skype, so you don't have to. They'll come, and obviously, I think some people will probably rely on them and move business to them. But it's a value add for businesses to educate employees on the 401ks, particularly at a time like this where it's not just that the stock market, as of right now. It is 11:08 a.m. for those of you listening to me live on Friday, the 24th or 28th rather. The Dow is down 924.95 points right now. The NASDAQ is down 225.88 points right now. It's not just that the stock market has wiped out all of this year's gains. As of this moment, 11:08 a.m. on February 28th, 2020, the Dow Jones has now wiped out all of last year's gains as well. And so people are obviously concerned. And so if you want to help your employees think about this, seriously, go to dynamicmoney.com, get the phone number, call Chris and his team and say, hey, can y'all come just sit down with my employees and explain the way 401ks work and what they need to be thinking about on retirement and how they should process stuff. They do that. They don't just do finance. They do financial education as well. And they're very, very good at it. They've really helped my family personally with financial education. So all of that being said, don't panic. Invest for the long haul. Frankly, I have somebody, not Chris, my buddy John Lindvig handles my stocks. And Chris and Dynamic Money handle my 401k, but like for individual investing and stuff, my buddy John Lindvig, who I've known for a very long time, who's just, the dude's brilliant. And so I send him money every month and I'm like, dude, we need to buy. I want to buy everything right now as everything collapses. It is a great time to get in the market as far as I'm concerned, but I'm not an expert and he is. So all of that being said, don't panic. I want to actually get out of politics altogether. I'm going to weave this back into politics. Bear with me. I am a professional. I know I often today I don't sound like it. I need to be on a golf course drinking beer and hitting golf balls today. Clear my head. There's a lot going on, but I got to get a golf membership. You know, there's this place in Macon near me called the Brickyard, and I keep thinking I need to go check them out. I've got several friends of mine who go out there. I need to get on a driving range. I suck at golf, but sometimes there's nothing like hitting golf balls to clear your head. So I want to get out of politics and I want to get into something else, and I'm going to weave it back if you'll bear with me. I want to talk about Bob Iger. Now, you probably are familiar with the name, even if you don't really know who Bob Iger was. Up until this week, Bob Iger was the CEO of Disney. This week, completely unexpected, he handed the CEO role over immediately to Bob Chapek, I believe his name is. Bob Chapek is the he's the chairman of Disney Parks. And he has been the designated successor for a while, but everyone thought it would come several years from now. But Iger, completely out of the blue and before the markets closed, announced he's done. Now, he's technically going to stay on as chairman to direct creative endeavors of the company, and he'll do that through the end of 2021. But what has he done? He launched Disney Plus. Disney Plus is fantastic. He bought Pixar. He bought Marvel. He bought Lucasfilms. He bought 20th Century Fox. He bought their IP. He expanded the Disney parks. He built a Star Wars world. He built an Avatar world. Bob Iger has done just incredible things. They released in 2019 alone, 7 of the top films were Disney films. The 8th, Spider-Man Far From Home, Disney got a good chunk of because it collaborated with Sony on doing. It's a really big deal that they've done. It's a really big deal that Iger did this. It's a really phenomenal thing that Bob Iger did. And then he just up and announced before the markets even closed. Normally, when a CEO like Bob Iger at a Fortune 500 company like Disney decides to bail, they wait until the markets close and say, hey, I'm done. So that stocks have at least until the next day to figure out what's going on. No, they did a coordinated interview on CNBC, literally in matching outfits, at 2:30 in the afternoon, with Bob Iger and Chapek coming on together and saying, yep, I'm done. I'm done. And do you know, as people are wont to do, particularly in Hollywood, the conspiracy theories went into overdrive. You know, Mulan is coming out. Mulan is going to be a live-action movie. I'm wondering if people are actually going to go to theaters with the coronavirus. There are a lot of people, I wonder, are they going to go hang out in a theater with a couple hundred of their best friends to see a movie at a time where this virus is spreading around the world? I'll probably go. I really want to see Mulan. Mulan is one of my favorite Disney animated movies, and now they're doing this one. I really want to go see it. And there are a lot of people thinking, man, this movie must be garbage if Iger's bailing now. Not true, actually. The advanced screenings are impressive. Iger also announced there are more Star Wars movies coming now. They said they were going to cancel them, but nope, there are more Star Wars movies coming. But then the conspiracy theory is maybe he's been sexually harassing people. Maybe he's like a Harvey Weinstein. Maybe he's out the door because he's been doing stuff behind the scenes inappropriately with people in his office that he shouldn't, or maybe he's running for president. Maybe he's angling to be Mike Bloomberg's running mate. Maybe there's bad news coming. Maybe there's the world is falling apart. Maybe Iger has done something and we're going to find out about it in the financials of the company, and Disney's going under because of Iger, and he's bailing on it now before people find out. The conspiracy theorists have been blowing up the internet over why Bob Iger is gone. Bob Iger ousted a woman who had been deeply involved in 21st Century Fox and then moved over to Disney and was helpful in a number of ways with Disney, and he pushed her out the door. And there are a lot of people saying, I bet she has dirt on Bob Iger, and he's getting out before she can spread the dirt on him. Conspiracy theorists, because if you're in a position like Bob Iger, let's just admit it. If you're in a position like Bob Iger, you don't give up power like that. You don't give up hundreds of millions of dollars leading a multi-billion-dollar company. You don't walk away from it at the peak of power. Nobody does that. And yet Bob Iger did. There must be a reason why. It's much like when powerful politicians walk out the world, like Sean Duffy, congressman from Wisconsin. He and Rachel Campos Duffy. Sean Duffy had been on The Real World. He was the lumberjack. He was a DA and he got elected. And there must be a woman problem. He's leaving. Young, good-looking congressman leaving. It must be a woman problem. Or even with Paul Ryan, when Paul Ryan left. No. Sometimes it really is what they say. Sean and his wife, she's pregnant with their, I think, 7th or 8th child, is going to have birth abnormalities and wanted to be a better dad and be more engaged in the raising of this child and couldn't be gone to Washington all the time. And with Iger, do you know what the reason is? Do you know why he's actually walking away? Because Iger's going out on top. And no one in Hollywood goes out on top. And for all of his flaws, Bob Iger is a fairly grounded person. And Bob Iger remembers Michael Eisner. If you'll recall, when I was a kid in the late 80s and early 90s, you had the Disney TV show. And much like Walt Disney used to do before the Disney show, Michael Eisner decided he was going to be Walt Disney. And he would sit down and he would do the chat to the film before the Disney show started. And Eisner got very full of himself. And Iger was number 2. Iger was going to take over. And Eisner decided he didn't want to leave when he was supposed to leave and began to scuttle and undermine all the work that Bob Iger was doing. And it was Walt Disney's nephew who had to lead a coup to oust Michael Eisner and put Bob Iger in charge. And Bob Iger had to spend a couple of years cleaning up the mess left behind by Michael Eisner. Even more, and nearly cost the company fights. He did not want to do anything today that Netflix is able. There can't another year. But Pishin was the Roman emperor. Nope, they're coming to me. I'm going to decided to build throne room. That did 4 emperors. He divided up the Roman Empire, a tetrarchy, and he was the senior brother. They all wound up fighting, and ultimately Constantine gave up on the tetrarchy. On the coast of Macedonia, what became Yugoslavia, couldn't get her free, gave up all power. And there were all sorts of conspiracy theories. And what's impressive is how people gravitate so quickly to conspiracy theories because they see something that they're not used to seeing, therefore it must be a conspiracy theory. And sometimes it is. Like the spread of this virus from Wuhan, we still don't know where it came from. And many of the people weeks ago who were savaging Tom Cotton for suggesting maybe it was an accidental release from the bioweapons laboratory there, they're suddenly silent. There's actually an increasing possibility this was the case. It wasn't intentional and it wasn't malicious. It was just an accident. Maybe that was the case. But more often than Iger, because I see all the conspiracies believe that surely no man would give up. They've got to believe that the down 950 points. Rocketing. Clorox. That's right. Clorox up today as more and more employers are. Go back to the conspiracy theory thing for just a minute longer. Filled in for Rush. I brought this up one time and I'm going to say it again. Given every opportunity, they squandered someone else's fault. You know the people. I had a. He was pulled over for there. Well, I didn't know who the man was. That the man put crack under his, and the judge did it, and the judge looks at me, she's a client, and convinced himself of responsibility. And then they see others do stuff
15
that they would never do, and they must be convinced, oh, there's a conspiracy theory there as well. No, sometimes people just operate differently from you. It is Erick Erickson here. I'm sorry. I'm looking at these. My mind is being blown by some of these people and conversations. I can't give you the phone number because I'm a good guy and told my producer he and his wife can get on off for the weekend. I want to play this audio from Donald Trump Jr. in an interview with Fox News from Fox and Friends this morning, making Democrats very mad, but there's a point to it.
We've seen this play out for 4 years. Anything that they can use to try to hurt Trump, they will. Anything he does in a positive sense, like you heard from the reporter that was just suspended from ABC, they will not give him credit for. The playbook is old at this point, but for them to try to take a pandemic and seemingly hope that it comes here and kills millions of people so that they could end Donald Trump's streak of winning is a new level of sickness. I don't know if this is coronavirus or Trump derangement syndrome, but these people are infected badly. To run that in the New York Times, this isn't Vox. This isn't one of these, crazy left-wing journalists. This is the New York Times writing this with seriousness. It's truly sick. Now, those same Democrats last week, when my father shut down travel to and from China, were saying it's an overreaction. It's a disaster.
He's right. And they did do that. And now here comes Joe Biden on this, and he's claiming that the president is silencing experts on the coronavirus.
This morning, Dow futures down about 100 points. This follows yesterday, which was the single biggest point drop ever on the Dow, 1,200 points. And this has been the worst week for the stock market since the financial crisis in 2007, 2008. We've heard from the World Health Organization this now all has pandemic potential. Obviously, this all happening at a very important time politically in the United States. The South Carolina primary is tomorrow. And joining me now is Democratic candidate, former Vice President Joe Biden. Mr. Vice President, thank you very much for being with us this morning. Good morning to you.
Thank you, John, for having me.
So we see the stock market falling. The worst week since the financial crisis, which I know you lived through as a senator and then vice president. How serious do you think the economic impact will be from the coronavirus?
Well, I'm less concerned about the immediate economic impact than I am about whether or not we gain control of this. The idea that the experts are not allowed to speak, the president has silenced them. Dr. Fauci, who was in 3 administrations, worked in our administrations. We took care of Ebola. The idea that the whistleblower came out today saying that the people we sent to the air base to receive incoming folks were not trained. They didn't have the right suits on. This is time. Let the experts take this over.
Well, and that's what the vice president is doing, and that's why the vice president asked the experts to stop going on to TV. He wanted to be able to coordinate. Debbie Birx has been named, Ambassador Debbie Birx. She's been named as the response coordinator. She's a renowned global health official. She's a physician. Even the Obama people who yesterday were attacking the president for silencing the experts and putting this in the hands of the vice president are now saying, you know what, turns out this is a good thing, good for the president doing this. And yet a lot of the Democrats are still out there attacking the president. You've got Joe Biden out there making this. And again, this is conspiracy theory stuff here. Yes, Anthony Fauci had been all over TV scaring people. And the vice president's office reached out and said, hey, we've got a coordinator now. We've got a single point person now. Everybody go through Debbie Birx and get her to sign off on you going on TV and coordinate what your message is. So the CDC's not saying one thing, the National Institute of Health isn't saying another thing. And by the way, we do have a whistle. Isn't it funny? We have another partisan whistleblower coming out and saying we were completely unprepared and it's all the president's fault. No. The president is not in charge of day-to-day operations of the Centers for Disease Control. If the Centers for Disease Control sent people who were not prepared to handle the people on the airplane, that's not the president's fault. I'm sorry. You wouldn't blame Barack Obama, so you can't blame Donald Trump for that, and yet they're trying. Here's Pete Buttigieg.
simple example from the headlines right now, right? When you have an issue like a virus that's threatening lives and spreading around the world, don't you want people around the president who will tell the president if things aren't going quite right and suggest an adjustment, right? And I promise you, as president, I will never want to be the smartest person in the room. I'll always want to have people around me who can tell me what's going on.
Do you believe Pete Buttigieg? Seriously, Mr. I speak Norwegian because I wanted to learn a book. For Pete Buttigieg to say he never wants to be the smartest guy in the room, I'm surprised lightning didn't strike. Good gracious. They are turning this into, they're trying to turn this into a political issue against the president of the United States. They are trying to scare people. They are trying to make it sound as bad as possible. They are trying to fearmonger and cause people to lose sleep at night. They're frankly weaponizing the coronavirus politically against the president of the United States. And I don't know that it's going to work. By the way, the vice president's been at CPAC, and he's been lobbing some punches in the other direction.
Well, look, and there was criticism last month. But when we first received word of the outbreak of the coronavirus, shortly after the first of the year, the health team came in. I was there in the Oval Office, and they said to the president, look, what we ought to do is we ought to end air travel. We ought to close our border. And we ought to establish a quarantining process for any American citizens that we allow back in. And they said, no president has ever done this before, but we're recommending out of an abundance of caution that you do it. And President Trump didn't hesitate for 1 second. He said, do it. And it was criticized by some at the time. But as I said, our health experts told me again yesterday when we huddled right after that press briefing for the first time. They said we would be in a very different place today if President Trump hadn't taken the decisive action that we had. And today, we haven't had a new case for the last 2 weeks until the word that reached the public in the last 24 hours. We've had 15 cases in this country. People are being treated and doing well. One is still in the hospital. But the other 45 cases are all American citizens that we brought back home, went through a quarantining process. We're monitoring them. So I take my hat off to the president's leadership, as well as to Secretary Azar, the team at CDC, Homeland Security. This has been a whole of government approach, but when the president tapped me to lead the White House effort on this, I think it just demonstrated again to the public the seriousness that the president's placed on this. He's telling us to lean into this effort out of an abundance of caution because he has no higher priority than the health and safety of the American people.
That was an interview at CPAC with Sean Hannity. A little more of this from the vice president.
Well, look, the president made it clear yesterday, we're all in this together. This is not the time for politics. And after the president asked me to lead the effort on the corona response from the White House, working with the task force that he established now a month and a half ago, working with state government officials and local and health officials, the president also directed me to reach out. I spoke to Speaker Pelosi. I spoke to Senator Schumer, as well as the Republican.
How did those conversations go?
They were good conversations.
They were because they were politicizing it almost instantaneously.
Yeah, I know. But look, the president said to me, look, I want you to reach out to the Republican and Democrat leadership because we want to push politics aside. We want to make sure we get the resources that we need to respond to this, to make sure the CDC, all of our agencies have the support that they need, that states have the support should this matter become more serious. But the president's message is very clear. We're ready. We're ready for anything. We continue to prepare for whatever may come. But the reality is that because of the actions that President Trump took last month, literally, ending travel, closing our borders to people coming in from China, establishing a quarantine process, setting up a task force. I mean, if the president hadn't taken those unprecedented steps,
they didn't seem to like it.
We'd be in a very different place today, Sean.
I go back to February 2nd. The Washington Post ran a story of Democrats around the country blasting President Trump for suspending air travel from China. They actually attacked him on February 2nd, 2020, for ordering airlines to stop air travel with China and ordering the CDC to begin monitoring at airports of people coming into the country from foreign travels using laser thermometers to check people for fever. They said it was an overreaction and it was going to spark panic. I'm not making that up. I read the story on this program. And now the Democrats are blowing up the president, saying he's not doing enough. Now they're blowing up I played the soundbite earlier, but I played the soundbite in the first hour. In the last 2 hours, the vice president is being attacked for this. Listen to this statement.
The risk of the spread of the coronavirus in the United States of America remains low. That's according to all of our experts, and it's a direct result of the unprecedented action that President Trump took last month when he closed our border to Chinese individuals coming into the country and also established a quarantining effort. Our White House coronavirus task force has literally been meeting every day for the last 6 weeks. And the American people can be confident that we're going to bring, at the president's direction, the full resources of the federal government to bear to protect the people of this country. That being said, during this time of year, it's always a good idea to engage in best practices, and people can go to cdc.gov to get the latest information on not only this virus, but how they can best see to the health of their family and their community.
He's being attacked for telling people we're still at a relatively low risk for a mass spread of the coronavirus in the United States. He's actually telling the truth. As he said, he's quoting the experts. As he said, he's taking advice from the experts. As he said, he's allowing the experts to take the lead in determining what to do. The vice president's job here is to put all of the people who can make decisions around the table and get them to make a decision. The vice president's job is to coordinate government agencies. The vice president is an elected person who can be held accountable by the voters if he screws this up. Hell, he can be held accountable by the president. He can suddenly not be the president's running mate if this thing collapses. You want the vice president to be the guy. You know, there's a great line, and it's from Barack Obama. The problem with being president is that when a decision arrives at your desk to be made, the reason it arrives at your desk to be made is because no one else on the way up to your desk could make it. The president doesn't need to be making the decisions unless they're the big decisions no one else can make. Giving this to the vice president was a smart thing to do. Everyone knows the vice president has the president's ear. Everyone knows the vice president is the number 2 person in the executive branch. Everyone knows the vice president is competent, except for Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, who thinks he's going to get people killed. She's actually on social media today saying that this is a dangerous decision to allow the vice president to be in charge because the vice president's going to get people killed because he literally, her words, literally doesn't believe science. Please learn how to use the word literally. And also, he does believe science. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez believes boys can decide to become girls. Absolutely silly. This is nuts. And the outrage is crazy. And the president is right, and the vice president is right, and Donald Trump Jr. is absolutely right. I really do believe, and let me look at the camera and say this in case Media Matters or someone else wants this. Let me get in position here as I live stream this. Yes, there are Democrats in the United States of America right now, including a bunch of radical environmentalists who see the spread of the coronavirus as a good thing. They see a recessionary event caused by the coronavirus as a good thing because they think it will lower emissions. It will kill off people who are destroying the planet that they believe is going to come to an end within a decade. And yes, there are Democratic politicians who really do believe they could capitalize on the spread of the coronavirus to get the Democrats elected. You're damn right. There are Democrats out there right now who believe at a partisan level that the spread of the coronavirus will be a good thing for them politically. And that's sad. They are rooting against this country. It's unfortunate. And it's the reality we live in, where even members of the press will weaponize politically the coronavirus to spread fear and try to wreak havoc on the economy because they really believe the economy is the only thing keeping the president in power right now. And if the economy goes down, he goes down. And they are perfectly happy to try to talk it down and try to scare people about the coronavirus. And maybe, just maybe, something will be screwed up. Maybe, just maybe, it'll spread. And then maybe, just maybe, if it gets out of hand, the people will blame Donald Trump and throw him out of office. And it is sad we've gotten to this point where everything has to be hyper-partisan and hyper-politicized. But there are Democrats out there right now who are hoping for it. And that's sad. Some of them are willing to admit it, some of them aren't. I kid you not, there are environmentalists out there today who think this is a good thing, that it's going to help heal the planet. It's Mother Earth responding to polluting people. It really is sad that a group of people, they've abandoned God for nature, and they've now embraced this virus as some sort of solution to what ails them politically or environmentally, because they're so desperate for power and they can't even think, maybe, just maybe we should be rooting for the president right now instead of trying to scare everyone and hoping he fails. But they're too polluted by the coveting of power to do that.
Well connected and well respected. It's Erick Erickson. Interviews and Erick's daily email by texting show to 33777.
The rookery is calling me, man. If you know, you know. It is 55 after the hour, and I want to do a little bit of a reset for you, if I can, away from the coronavirus. That we'll keep an eye on it for you. Remember, again, if you haven't seen the dashboard, the visual dashboard from Johns Hopkins that has been chronicling the progression of the coronavirus around the world, it's got a great heat map, among other things that I'm pulling it up right now for you to give you the latest update here at 11:55 a.m. on February 28th. We now have 83,860. It's jumped 83,867 confirmed cases. It was 83,820 when we started the show. No change in the U.S. 60 in the U.S. But we've got globally now. Let's see, 0 deaths in the U.S. We've got 6 recovered in the United States. That's fantastic news. And we've got, let's see, trying to reboot here, most of them continuing to be in China. 2,867 deaths, 36,686 recovered people. The worst of it is in China, followed by South Korea, 2,337. Italy at 655, Iran 388, Japan 228. Again, the United States at 60, most of them repatriated. We now have that one case that looks like the person came into contact with people who were in quarantine and then went to the hospital. The governor of California says there are over 8,000 people who are suspected, could be infected. Don't let that freak you out. Those are basically all the people who potentially, not all the people who came into contact with that one guy, but all the people who potentially came into contact with that one guy. Part of this is, I suspect, they're trying to scare everybody on this. The real story, though, to pay attention to is going to be South Carolina tomorrow. You will see news coverage tomorrow night while you're out and about. You'll be getting push alerts if you subscribe to news outlets or some such. I need to develop an app where I can send you people push alerts, so you just get your news from me and I can tell you what's worth worrying about. Because some of these people, I get these push alerts. I'll be in church on Sunday and get a push alert, and I'll think, oh, there's breaking news, and I'll glance at my watch in the middle of the sermon, and it'll be the New York Times with some stupid story they want me to look at. Drag Queen Story Hour continues to spread around the nation. Learn what's behind it. Seriously, good Lord, people, it's embarrassing, some of the push alerts from the New York Times, and it makes me mad. Now, nonetheless, I digress. Pay attention to South Carolina. The thing you don't want to pay attention to are, so when you get into church on Sunday and your friends are talking politics because football season's over and baseball season's barely begun, and so you're talking politics because that's the sporting event we're in right now, you're going to be the most informed person because you're going to say, what? You're going to say, oh, Joe Biden won by X. If it's double digits, he probably springs into Super Tuesday, rebounds in Texas, and has a good Super Tuesday. It'll be 2 days later after church. It's on Tuesday, Super Tuesday. If Joe Biden's only in single digits, then you'll say, oh, Joe Biden won, but it was way closer than all the polls suggested. This still leaves Bernie Sanders as the front runner right now, and the vice president's going to have to rebound in Texas, but Bloomberg is holding him down in the polls, and you'll be the smartest person in church on Sunday. By the way, go to church on Sunday. It's good for your soul.